Why the Kinnaur and Spiti loop? Because if you want to experience every season of the year in a single day, this is where you go. This place is completely unmatched, rarely touched by cyclists compared to the rest of the Himalayas, and that emptiness is earned. It was a brutal, beautiful expedition, extreme weather, broken roads, clinging to cliffhanger edges, and a catastrophic bike failure that threatened to end it all on the spot. But amid the elements, the mountains provided good Samaritans came to the rescue all the way through. This is a journey exactly as it happened from day zero. Enjoy. Day zero. I hit the ground running. Out of the Delhi airport, I had a taxi for about 300-kilometer journey straight up to Kasauli. As the flat plains vanished and I caught my first glimpse of the mountain terrain, my mind started racing. I had initially planned for 2 days of rest here to beat the jet lag, but looking at the hills, I had this sudden strong gut feeling I needed to start tomorrow. I needed to bank that extra rest day for whatever the future had in store. Once I checked into the hotel, I wasted no time, assembled the bike myself and packed up my heavy luggage and bike box to ship ahead to Dharamshala, where the journey would eventually end. To scope out the path ahead, I took a quick motorcycle ride to assess the day one road conditions. Just as I thought, it was rough. My call to start early was absolutely right. After coordinating the courier drop-off, I had a solid meal, prepped my gear for the morning and went to sleep, my mind completely flooded with thoughts of the solo adventure ahead. Day 1 was finally here. My plan was to push all the way to Narkanda, but the mountains had other plans for me. There was no time for breakfast. I figured I would just grab something on the road. After fighting through the initial bumpy, broken roads out of Kasauli, I hit the smoothly paved 2-lane asphalt of NH5. I made a few quick detours to try and secure a local SIM card, but the shops were completely locked up and I could not afford to waste any more time waiting around. To avoid the bustling daytime traffic of Shimla ahead, I decided to cut away from the highway right from Solan, taking a detour through the rural winding roads of Chayal. It was a serious steep climb, but the quiet backcountry scenery made it entirely worth it. As I was enjoying the peaceful views around Chayal, the sky completely changed. Massive storm rolled in. I crammed into a makeshift roadside shelter, huddling with a few locals who were also dodging the weather. As we chatted, a young man warmly insisted that I come to his house to escape the storm. By this time,
this is one kind of a mushroom.
Okay.
And this is used for a medicine and drugs as well.
What a timing for the light.
3 hours. Pushing on to Narkanda in these conditions was way too risky. I knew I had to take a call early and stay in Koti, which was just a couple of kilometers away. Reluctantly, I told him I would join him for a cup of chai first. We took off, plummeting down a massive descent that led into a nasty steep mud-graded trail. His house stood completely isolated, clinging to the mountainside. As I struggled down the slick mud, a wave of doubt hit me. What on earth did I just sign up for? But the moment I stepped inside, the family's incredible hospitality completely erased my anxiety. I did not just find a safe refuge from the storm. I found a beautiful, amazing family and a friend for life. Day 1 did not. Stage 2. I said goodbye to the wonderful family at Koti and rolled into the morning air. The day began with a beautiful climb through Pooh, a bustling hub packed with adventure tourists. Along the way, I met a true Himalayan guardian. Grinding up a steep climb, a troop of monkeys suddenly dropped from the trees, herding right in front of me. I had bananas in my pack, but I knew if I shared one, they would tear my bags apart looking for the rest. Just as the tension peaked, a stray dog appeared out of nowhere. He stayed glued to my wheel for over half a kilometer, keeping every monkey into the woodline. At the last hairpin turn, once he knew I was safely clear, he stopped and gave me a final tail wag. They say the Himalayas look after solo travelers. That goodbye glance is permanently etched into my soul. When I merged into NH5 highway, the crisp mountain air was instantly choked out by heavy diesel fumes. I had planned to push to Rampur, but the mountain's way of telling me to slow down. I called it a day in Narkanda instead. The mountain still had to leave a mark. Honey harvesting was in full swing and the air was thick with swarms. One bee decided to test my mettle, stinging me right on the hand. I like to think he flew back to the hive and warned his friends, stay away from the cyclist, he has got no sugar in him. Hands swollen and all, it's time to head deeper into the valleys. Next stop is Rampur. What a day it turned out to be. I thought I would squeeze in a quick off-route climb to Hatu peak before heading down to Rampur. But it turned out into an absolute monster that drained every bit of my strength. It was easily the steepest ascent and the scariest descent I've ever done. Extreme elevation, narrow off-roads, sharp V-bends and constant car traffic squeezing past me on the way up to the temple. To make it even more brutal, the weather was pure chaos. I stayed in a bone-chilling 38 °F cold, only to hit a searing 87 on the way to Rampur. Then came the light storm the forecast promised, which actually meant getting completely drenched and freezing right after. You only get to experience 4 seasons in a single day like this on a bike. I was stripping layers and gearing back up on the side of the road all afternoon. To top it off, I noticed a slight mechanical issue today, a small warning sign of a much bigger problem to come later. but I fixed it for now.
भी टाइट हो गया. हाँ हाँ
टाइट हो गया.
या टाइट हो गया.
ग्रीस मांगता है कि क्या?
ना नहीं ग्रीस है ये लूज करना है, थोड़ा सा लूज करना है.
तब तो मैकेनिक मिलेगा इसका. यहाँ से 500 मीटर आगे.
Finally, I rolled into Rampur, completely beaten. Tomorrow is a much needed rest day to recharge. Stage 4, Rampur to Sangla. It is always going to be a massive day, so I rolled out at 4 a.m. in the morning. But just a few kilometers in, frustration hit. I realized I had forgotten my water bottle and I had to backtrack to retrieve it. The real tone for the morning was set on the edge of Rampur when a pack of aggressive dogs logged onto me. This did not just happen once. I was ambushed 3 separate times before even leaving the town limits. Noticing locals carrying heavy sticks for protection, I scavenged a solid one of my own, brandishing it to keep the snapping packs at bay until they finally backed off. Once past this chaos, the real work began. A long, slow climb along the NH5. The exact moment I hit the Karcham junction to turn into Sangla road, the sky opened up. I quickly threw on my layers, braced myself, and started grinding. The road to Sangla is absolutely not for the faint of heart. It was pure brutal gravel and wheel swallowing potholes, clinging to a sheer cliff with about 500 to 1000 foot drop, testing my nerves at every unguarded turn. The unforgiving surface severely punished both my body and the bike. Completely drenched and shivering, I just kept my head down and turned the pedals. Hours of slow grinding finally brought me into town. I have holed up in a local hotel to dry off my soaked gear while the storms roar through the peaks outside. Stage 5, Sangla to Chitkul. This stage was entirely challenging, pushing above 9,000 feet altitude to reach the 12,000 feet mark for crucial high altitude acclimatization. The conditions were brutal. It was not just the unforgiving rocks strewn road surface vibrating through the frame, but the rapidly thinning air testing my lungs with every pedal stroke. Navigating the endless minefield of potholes was nearly impossible with local car traffic constantly squeezing past me on the narrow ledges. I fought through every agonizing inch of vertical gain and finally made it to Chitkul. was a final checkpost another 4 kilometers away, and looking at the sky, I honestly thought about skipping it and turning around to race on incoming Himalayan storm back down to the safety of Sangla. But a good Samaritan stopped and convinced me to push on, promising a well-paved tarmac just ahead. Encouraged by the thought of smooth roads, I turned back upward to continue the climb. Along the way, an elderly couple stopped their car to wave at me, exchange warm pleasantries, and kindly offered me water. A beautiful reminder of mountain hospitality. But right after they drove away, the trip changed instantly. As I initiated my first pedal stroke to move forward, my front fork catastrophically snapped completely off the chassis. I was not even moving fast, and I was not even moving. It happened right there at the standstill rather than a few minutes later when I was descending high-speed switchbacks like originally planned. It took a few minutes of standing on the side of the road to fully process the sheer impact of what has just occurred, how things have turned out. Miles away from a major city, the expedition was at a deep, dead stop. I immediately called my hotel and had a local taxi pick up the wreckage. Now I'm heading back down the mountain while weighing my remaining options. Finding replacement components, matching headset tolerances, or locating a qualified mechanic for a high-end technical bike in this remote sector will be a monumental challenge. Recovery day. Scavenging a lifeline. I immediately worked the phones across Himachal, searching for any matching folk to save the journey. No one had answers except bike bros in Shimla. The owner said he had a mountain bike folk that might fit. I had a good gut feeling, so I chose to trust the stranger. My hotel host dropped me midway the following morning, and I took a taxi from Rampur, landing in Shimla by 3 p.m. But the mountain was not done with me. While shutting the hatch, the driver accidentally smashed my crank rings. A pure freak accident. But now I had two catastrophic failures to fix. What followed was an intense battle of sourcing and scavenging mismatched parts. By late night, the bike was functionally alive. It looked completely different from the premium machine I started with. A total Frankenstein build, but it rolled. After arranging how to ship the borrowed parts back to post trip, I loaded into the same taxi for the long journey back to Kalpa. I rested overnight in Rampur, hit the road early, and rolled into Kalpa around noon. I said goodbye to my driver Gitu, who had been a lifesaver through it all. Against all odds, the expedition is back on. Stage 6, Roghi Peak at Kalpa, the Frankenstein test. After settling back at Kalpa, I needed to take this chaotic new bike setup for a proper test ride. Roghi Peak felt like the perfect term. Right away, the changes were jarring. The steering handlebar felt incredibly stiff, and I immediately had to adjust my saddle height to compensate for the massively raised front stack. It was a stark realization. My precision bike fit was completely thrown out the If I wanted to survive the rest of this loop, I had to adapt to whatever I had and do it fast. I fine-tuned the settings on the fly and pushed ahead. The views climbing up Roghi Peak were absolutely stunning, but one specific spot stopped me dead in my tracks. A sign marked it clearly as Suicide Point. Looking out over the sheer drop, I could not help but laugh at the irony. Every single cliff side along this entire narrow road was worthy of that exact same title. After completing the rugged test loop, I made a stop to visit the ancient, peaceful local monastery at Kalpa to clear my head. The bike held together, the adaptations are made, and the body is rested. Tomorrow the journey pushes deeper into the valley towards Pooh. Stage 7, Kalpa to Pooh. I started early from Kalpa, rolling out without any breakfast. Passing through Rekankio, the town was completely asleep. Nothing was open. So I had to survive on a pocket full of biscuits for hours. Finally, a lone dhaba hut appeared on the side of the highway, a welcome lifeline. As we pushed further, the landscape shifted dramatically. The lush greenery vanished, and the raw beauty of towering rocks and high-altitude desert opened up before me. With the sun beating down on the canyon, the cold air vanished, and I quickly had to strip off my layers to cope with the sudden heat. It took some time to mentally and physically adapt to the altered bike fit, but the rolling tarmac made for a surprisingly pleasant rhythm until I hit a final stretch to Pooh. Pooh is a striking town known for its distinct colorful rooftops dotting the mountain slope. Reaching it required a brutal grinding climb of a series of exposed windy switchbacks. Exhausted, I dug deep into the pedals to make it up to the village, where I was instantly and pleasantly greeted by a vibrant local deity procession moving through the streets. It was an incredible cultural welcome. Afterward, I doubled back through the narrow lanes, found a neat little guest house for the night, and I called it a day. Stage 8, Pooh to Nako, the Kazakh's loop torture. After fueling up with a solid breakfast at the guest house, I rolled out of Pooh, The initial descent down to the riverbed was fast and refreshing. But the relief did not last. By 10 am, the temperature skyrocketed, plunging me straight into a suffocating desert heat. This is the place where I realized satellite signals were getting jammed, and that was the case going forward. My Garmin went completely blind, and cellular reception frequently vanished into total dead zones. Cut off from digital maps, had to rely on pure human intelligence, asking local travelers for directions whenever I hit unmarked crossroads. This stage easily became the toughest battle of the entire expedition, since the grueling ascents to Sangla and Chitkul. Though the challenges here were completely different. It was a toxic combination of scorching heat, thinning high altitude air, and relentless blinding dust kicked up by passing vehicles. Then I hit the infamous car loops, a savage, never-ending wall of tightly stacked switchbacks that felt like a geometric prison. My body was burning fuel and moisture at an alarming rate. By the time I finally topped out the climb, I had consumed a massive 8 bottles of water just to keep heat stroke at bay. Incredibly, 6 of those bottles were completely donated on the fly by Good Samaritans, the generous motorists passing by who saw me battling the dust and heat. That mountain hospitality literally saved my ride. When this hard-fought battle finally ended, I rolled into a high altitude village of Nako, completely spent. I found a quiet guest house to collapse, rehydrate, and start planning tomorrow's push deeper into the desert. Stage 9, Nako to Tabo. It's a gateway to the deep Spiti. After clearing the grueling altitude of Nako, Stage 9 kicked off with a short, punchy climb towards Malling Point, the absolute highest architectural shelf of the area.
Let's put this shit together. Solve this puzzle clever. Every night a new mystery endeavor. Watch out for that bitch in leather. Separate time, let us pull the lever. Electric rituals bring us together. Better release ahead of the beast. Seeking a soul for peace. Fear becomes release and the reaching a goal for peace. And we don't like biz. They embody hate.
From there, the mountain rewarded me with the ultimate payoff, the beautiful sweeping descent of the car loops. Plummeting down those dizzying stacked switchbacks with the canyon walls falling away was pure magic. I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. Hands down the best, most exhilarating descent of the entire trip so far. But the smooth tarmac was short-lived. After a long high-speed drop, I reached a remote police checkpost and officially crossed the threshold into the Spiti Valley.
With the
Instantly the environment shifted. National Highway 5 choked down into a rugged single lane track of broken pavement, dirt and raw shale. The local guards gave me a sobering warning. The brutal, shattered surface was going to be the story going forward all the way to Kaza and beyond. There was no turning back. From that point on, it was an intense mental battle. I had to constantly negotiate the narrow ledge, fighting for my line against oncoming traffic and cars squeezing past right beside me, with a sheer drop to the river on my flank. At looking past the chaos of the road, the sheer raw beauty of the Spiti Valley opened up in a way that was completely mesmerizing. Towering sun-baked mud cliffs and wide gravel riverbeds framed the entire horizon. I kept the steady rhythm, pushed through the dust, and finally rolled into the historic town of Tabo. After checking in and letting my vibrating muscles rest, I walked over to visit the ancient 1,000-year-old Tabo monastery to quietly end the day. The bike held up, the dirt has begun, and next stop is Kaza. Stage 10, Tabo to Kaza, the last frontier. After fueling up with a solid breakfast in Tabo, I spent some time dialing in the Frankenstein bike setup. On these unforgiving backcountry trails, even a loose bolt can spell disaster, and the road to Kaza was promised to be a rough dust-choked battleground. As I rolled out, the warnings held true. The surface was entirely broken, rock and loose dirt, kicking up heavy clouds of dust with every passing vehicle. Along the way, I stopped to check with local crews and villagers about the status of Kunzum Pass. If it was open, I could look all the way through to Manali and to Dharamshala. The answer came back negative. It was completely snowed in. That meant Kaza would be the absolute end of the line, as it's the last major town where you can source any logistics or transport to head back down the valley. With my mind dialed into this new reality, I logged in and pushed hard through the blinding dust and harsh conditions. But as one door closed, another opened. On my way here and again at the guest house, locals pointed out something staggering. If I kept going, I'd be the very first 50 plus Indian born cyclist to complete a solo completely unsupported expedition all the way into deep sea Spiti, let alone pushing up the extreme heights of the Tashigang polling station or the Hikim post office. Rolling into Kaza felt monumental. I celebrated the milestone with a few quick photos, navigated the bustling mountain lanes to my guest house, and immediately double checked the Kunzum pass status with the locals. It was still a hard negative. The catch: the local taxi union controls the valley's transport, and no vehicles would be available to haul me or the bike out for the next couple of days. I had a window of clear weather and a historic milestone right in front of me. The decision was instant. Tomorrow, I attempt the brutal climb to Tashigang. Stage 11, Kaza to Tashigang. It's the ultimate prize. The final showdown had arrived. After fueling up with a solid breakfast in Kaza, I stripped all the heavy baggage off of my bike. Moving lightweight was my only way for tackling the extreme conditions ahead. The ride started with a steady grind through the morning traffic until I cleared the iconic Kibber Gate. Taking the sharp right towards Tashigang, the world instantly changed. The road plunged into absolute deafening wilderness. From that point on, it was just me, my bicycle, the towering peaks, and a few scattered mountain cattle. As I punched past the 14,000 foot mark, the environment turned hostile. Without warning, a massive gust caught my front wheel, throwing me clean off the bike and tossing me 10 feet into the dirt against the mountain wall. It was my second fall of the expedition. I lay there for a few minutes, regrouped, checked the bike, and began treading forward with extreme caution. In a bizarre twist of high altitude technology, the cellular signal out here was surprisingly strong, allowing me to make a few quick check-in calls. But the terrain was not done playing mind games. The dirt tracks splintered and I somehow got turned around, riding in a frustrating circle until I hit a spot that looked far too familiar. Realizing I was lost, I tracked back towards a distant cell tower, fired up Google Maps, and spotted the mistake: a razor-thin, easily missed trail carving up the ridge. I took the turn, dug into the pedals for one final lung-burning push, and there it was, the highest polling station in the world, standing completely solitary at an incredible 15,256 feet. I made it. After celebrating with some unforgettable photos, I turned the bike around and let gravity carry me all the way back down to Kaza. The ultimate prize was won.
क्या चाहिए तुमको? खाना क्या? ले लो. हैं? उसको भी दे दो. उसको भी दे दो.